Hey, folks, it's Rick Wilson. Welcome back to the Enemies List podcast. You know, this week's Enemies List really going to have a resonance with everything else that's happening right now because it's about the Epstein files. It's about the Department of Justice specifically, including the most corrupt attorney general in the history of America, her incredibly corrupt wingman, the corrupt FBI director, and the incredibly corrupt deputy FBI director. That's Kash Patel and Dan Bongino at the FBI. That's Pam Bondi and Todd Blanche at the Department of Justice. These people, given the revelations from the tranche of emails released by the Democratic Oversight Committee this week, are involved in what is now clearly a criminal conspiracy. Pam Bondi and Todd Blanche and Kash Patel and Dan Bongino are summoning members of Congress to the White House Situation Room to yell at them and browbeat them and intimidate them to take their names off of the discharge petition that will reveal the Epstein files. You should know something about these emails. The Department of Justice has all of them. They have all these emails because there have been multiple federal cases against both Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. They have all this information. I want to focus in for a moment on Todd Blanche because Todd Blanche flew down to Tallahassee, Florida, where I live, to the Tallahassee Women's Federal Correctional Facility, and he had a series of secret meetings with Ghislaine Maxwell. Now, I say they're secret meetings because even though a transcript was revealed, the terms of the deal that was set up were not. Because Todd Blanche happens to be friends and former podcasting buddies with Ghislaine Maxwell's attorney.
Okay, I want to welcome Todd Blanche to For the Defense. Everybody knows who Todd is, and he's the first guest on For the Defense to appear twice. So welcome to the show, Todd.
That is an honor. Thank you very much, David. I really appreciate it.
Mysteriously, after he interviewed the convicted pedophile sex trafficker Ghislaine Maxwell, she was moved to the cushiest federal prison in America, in Bryan, Texas, Club Fed. How cushy is this prison? Todd Blanche arranged for Ghislaine Maxwell to be moved to this cushy Club Fed prison where prisoners can leave the compound during the day. So cushy that Ghislaine Maxwell has been given a puppy. You know, like most prisoners get a dog. She's had the warden at this prison helping work up her federal commutation papers because Todd Blanche and Donald Trump are terrified. And Pam Bondi is terrified. And Kash Patel is terrified. And Dan Bongino is terrified that the secrets of the Epstein files drip, drip, drip will emerge. Not what they've hidden or redacted or shredded, but what's going to come out of the cases that were underway, including the federal case that Maureen Comey was prosecuting until they fired her. What a mystery. What a mystery. An ongoing case that would have revealed more of Jeffrey Epstein's financial and sexual malfeasance was mysteriously just, no need to work on that anymore. But they need Maxwell. They need her in one of two states, cooperative or dead. Even these morons are not unsubtle enough to go in and say, Ghislaine, if you don't cooperate, you could have an accident in prison. She's not dumb. She's evil, but she ain't dumb. She knows that Donald Trump is getting close to pardoning her, which is why she came out and said to Todd Blanche in that unbelievably overwrought statement, oh, he was a perfect gentleman at all times. Donald Trump has never been a perfect gentleman in his life. He is a man who has a long history of being a pinnacle level creeper, of being the kind of predatory scumbag that women cover their drinks when he walks in the room. He has a long history of women who have reported abuse at the hands of Donald Trump in court filings, in legal complaints. He has a long history, as recounted by his first wife, as recounted by E. Jean Carroll, of violence against women. These aren't speculation. These aren't something I'm making up out of my ass. These are the actual character traits of Donald Trump that he has portrayed over the years. When Donald Trump says that he likes to go in the dressing rooms of his teen beauty pageants, does that strike you as the sort of upstanding moral character of a man who wouldn't fall into the clutches of Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell? No. But I'll tell you, the thing you're watching play out this week is only the tip of the iceberg. One of the things that we know from this entire shenanigan is that Trump's name appears in these emails that are being released hundreds and possibly thousands of times. Trump wasn't some incidental sort of character in Jeffrey Epstein's life. They were central characters in one another's lives. And what you learn even from this tranche of emails is the reason this corrupt Department of Justice is protecting Donald Trump is because the picture that is painted from contemporaneous emails between Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein and Michael Wolff and Jeffrey Epstein and other people, including Steve Bannon, is that the connections between these two men were long and intimate and that Trump knew. Trump knew. He knew about the girls. And Trump may not be a smart man, but he's not a completely unsophisticated guy when it comes to these sort of things. He knew what these women were. Strangely young. Do we know if he knew they were underage? Who knows? But he knew what they were. He knew who Jeffrey was. He knew what Epstein was. because they spent a lot of time together. They were social together. They were friends together. They were running buddies together. And that's what this Department of Justice is covering up. They desperately want you to think that none of this is real. They want you to think that none of this ever happened. Carolyn Leavitt yesterday basically said, oh, no, it's all a hoax. It's all fake. These emails are all made up. The Democrats had to have a time machine to go back and write them, folks.
So this administration has done more than any, and it just shows how this is truly a manufactured hoax by the Democrat Party. For now, they're talking about it all of a sudden because President Trump is in the Oval Office. But when Joe Biden was sitting in there, the Democrats never brought this up. This wasn't an issue that they cared about because they actually don't care about the victims in these cases. They care about trying to score political points against President Trump.
The illusion is cracking, and yet this Department of Justice is still covering this up. The illusion is harder and harder to sustain, but the Department of Justice is still covering it up. Ask yourself why. Ask yourself why you would hide this now. Ask yourself, what is the cause of the DOJ stonewalling? What is the cause of them putting 1,000 FBI agents to work, scanning through every piece of documentation they have in the 300 terabytes or gigabytes, whatever it is, of data and files? It's because there's a there there. Is there going to be a single video clip or a photograph or a written recount that says Donald Trump raped a 14-year-old girl? I don't know. But the DOJ is covering it up. Whatever they're covering up is bad enough that they're terrified. It's bad enough that this week has led to a complete meltdown in the MAGA world. It's led to a complete shit show in the MAGA world. Remember when all those low wattage, window licking, lead paint victim influencers from Chaya Reichik of Libs of TikTok and Jack Posobiec and Rogan O'Handjob and all these other people showed up at the White House to get their special Epstein briefing books? Pam Bondi around the same time said, oh, the Epstein files are on my desk.
The DOJ may be releasing the list of Jeffrey Epstein's clients. Will that really happen?
It's sitting on my desk right now to review.
I got it all. Dan Bongino goes out and says, oh, the things in these files are horrifying. They act like there's no there. They act like nothing's there at all. They act like nothing's happening. You are watching the single largest cover-up in the history of the American government. By far. You are watching a cover-up being run by the Department of Justice. This has corrupted the DOJ at the senior-most levels. Pam Bondi, Todd Blanche, and down the chain, by the way, Ed Martin and Janine Pirro and Alina Habba and Lindsay Halligan. All of this is a remarkably corrupt organization from the top to the bottom. And folks, I know there are a lot of line attorneys out there and a lot of line staffers out there in the DOJ who still think, I could save the day. I can steer the ship. No, you cannot. If you're below that political tier in the DOJ right now, you have a moral and ethical obligation to leak the fuck out of this stuff to Congress. You have a moral and ethical obligation to tell the truth to Congress. If you don't want to leak it to the press, I understand that. I get that. But if you don't want to tell it to Congress right now when you know they are engaged in corrupt activities, if you don't want to give it to Congress when you know that they are engaged in a cover-up of these materials that implicate the president in an association with a child sex trafficking ring, with a pedophile ring, then you are failing your duties, both as an attorney and as someone who has sworn an oath to the Constitution and this government. If you don't believe that Donald Trump ordering 1,000 FBI agents to go through these files was part of a cover-up, you are mistaken. If you don't believe that Pam Bondi directly lying to Congress, perjuring herself before Congress, and Todd Blanche lying to Congress and perjuring himself before Congress, and Kash Patel lying before Congress and perjuring himself before Congress, will not roll downhill, you are mistaken. Do not be a part of this cover-up. The Department of Justice has long been a deeply important agency in this nation. It has had political independence by and large. You know, I used to be quite critical of Eric Holder when he was Barack Obama's attorney general. I thought he was putting his toe in the water a little too much politically. From time to time, he would scooch out there. Nothing Eric Holder ever did comprises even 1/1000th of a scintilla of what is happening every day in this Department of Justice. Pam Bondi and Dan Bongino and Kash Patel and Todd Blanche and the rest of them, I want to repeat this again. They are engaging in a criminal conspiracy. Todd Blanche has suborned the perjury of Ghislaine Maxwell. I promise you, somewhere along the way, there is a moment outside in the hallway with no microphones on and no cameras running where Todd Blanche leaned over to the attorney and said, what do you need? Ghislaine Maxwell's attorney said, I need her to be pardoned. I need her to have her sentence commuted. What do you need? Todd Blanche said, she needs to shut up, go away, live on an island somewhere. Even a cushy federal prison, it's not as good going to live on an island somewhere. This criminal conspiracy to protect Donald Trump and to protect other powerful men who are in the Epstein materials, who Donald Trump believes can serve him in some way, is an ongoing travesty and a shame at the highest levels. The Department of Justice needs to play its legitimate role in our society. They need to be the lead law enforcement agency in the country. They need to be the agency that prosecutes wrongdoing and malfeasance. Right now, they are devoting almost all of their energies to covering up the Epstein files and engaging in the political persecution of the president's political rivals, as he defines them. Donald Trump is in the Epstein materials. Almost more fatally for Donald Trump that is in the Epstein materials is that he is a friend of Epstein's. He's a man who knew him, knew what and who he was, knew everything that was going on. He understood the girls. He understood the trafficking. I have no doubt in my mind that the contemporaneous messages that you saw so far this week are the very tip of a very, very large iceberg. This will not get better for Trump. It will get worse. Congress will pass this discharge petition. The Department of Justice will defy it. It will go through the courts. This is going to turn ugly. But right now, the legacy of the DOJ in the Trump era can go one of two paths. It can reform from below or be corrupted and destroyed from the top. And that, folks, is this week's enemies list. The Department of Justice. I'd like you to be off the list, but for now, you're on it. Hey, everybody, do me a big favor. If you're watching me on YouTube right now, go down there and click that subscribe button. We need the algorithm to be fed, and you can make this podcast bigger and more impactful if you'll just click that subscribe button. If you'd like, hit that bell so you're notified when we have another podcast out. If you're on Apple, Spotify, Google, or any other podcasting platform, go ahead and click subscribe or add us to your podcast list every week. We deeply appreciate it. You can catch me on the Enemies List podcast. You can catch me on the Elephant in the Room. You can catch me on the Lincoln Project podcast. And I stream at least twice a week on the Breakdown. We've also got the Strategy Session. And on Fridays, catch me with Andrew Wilson, where we break down the numbers of all the polling in this week. And I got to tell you, it ain't getting pretty for Donald Trump on the Behind the Numbers podcast. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate you listening. We'll talk to you again soon.